This video is about understanding the relationship between edges and faces. So we've already found out a little bit more about what edges and faces are. We're going to talk a little bit about how edges and faces relate to one another. What I've got here is a new SketchUp screen. What I'm going to do is erase Bryce, and let's start drawing some edges and faces here. I'm going to use the pencil tool and start to sort of draw along on the ground here, and I'm going to create a closed loop of edges. And when I do that, notice what SketchUp's going to do. It's going to create a face for me. So anytime, what I'm going to do now is take my eraser tool and erase one of these edges. Anytime I complete a loop of edges that are all coplanar, meaning they're all flat on the ground like this, or flat in any direction, SketchUp's automatically going to generate a face. You can't stop SketchUp from making faces, but what you can do is you can erase faces that you don't want to exist. So let's actually use the push-pull tool here and pull this up in one direction. And then what I'm going to do is just use this pencil to start kind of drawing some lines. So I'm going to come up in the blue direction, that's parallel to the blue axis, and I'm going to come down and connect to this corner, and watch what's going to happen. As soon as I connect this to this corner, what I'm essentially doing is creating a loop of closed edges, and voila, a face is going to be created. Now let's say I didn't want that face to be there. One of the ways that I can delete that is to grab the select tool again and then right click on the face and say erase. And notice what happens. Now that face is gone, those edges are still gone. So deleting a face doesn't actually delete all the edges that create that face. It just deletes that face. Now, if I want to go undo a step here and show you one thing, I'm going to undo my erase. So I've got that face back. Another way that I might be able to get rid of that face is to use the eraser tool and actually erase one of the edges that defines that face. So watch what happens when I delete this edge. I'm going to delete that edge, and that face disappears too. So let's take the pencil tool, and I'm going to connect the top of this edge to the bottom, just like we did before. And of course, SketchUp's going to create that face because it can. What I'll do now is I'll take the select tool and erase the face that I don't want to be there. Now, let's say I want to get that face back, and there's no face tool or anything like that. We can look through the tools all we want. There's no such thing as a face tool. The way to make a face, even after you've got a closed loop of edges like this, is to just take your pencil and then retrace any of the edges. Notice how I'm just tracing over one of the same edges that I had before, and a face will be created there as well. All right. Now I'm going to talk about drawing an edge all the way across a face. And what that does is it actually splits a face. So watch what happens. I'm going to demonstrate this using the push-pull tool because I think it's the easiest way to see this. When I grab the push-pull tool and I hover over these different faces, notice how I can grab those faces and push and pull them around, things like that, right? But more importantly, when I hover over a face, you'll see that it's all kind of one face. It's all selected. It's got this kind of blue bumpy grid stuff on it. What if I wanted to have two faces there instead of one? What I would do is I'd use the pencil, or actually I could use any of the drawing tools, but I'm going to use the pencil in this case. And I'm just going to split this face by drawing an edge over it. So you notice how I've drawn an edge that splits that face? What it's actually done is split the face. And to demonstrate that, I'm going to use the push-pull tool right here. And notice when I hover over the two halves of this face, I can actually influence them separately. So let's do that again. I'm going to come over here, and what we'll do this time is we're going to use the rectangle tool to draw a rectangle on this face, and what I've got now is a face there and a face there. So by drawing a closed loop of edges on top of another face, notice what happened there. I'm going to leave this in the video because I think it's important for people to see. I wasn't paying attention to where I was drawing, so I ended up creating a shape that I didn't mean to create. Let's grab the eraser tool and just erase that stuff that I didn't want. Okay, so if I want to draw with the pencil tool on top of a flat shape like this, I better pay attention to where I am. And that's, by doing that, what I'm always going to do is look for this little blue square that says on face, and it's right at the tip of my pencil. I'm pointing to the screen right now, but you can't see that, so Instead, just look at the end of the pencil. There's a little blue on face hint. And as long as I see that, I know I'm drawing on the face. So notice when I close that loop of edges, now I've actually got a face drawn on top of another face. And I'll just use the push-pull tool to demonstrate that there are in fact two faces there as well. And of course I can push that in, I can push that out, I can bring this up, I can do all kinds of stuff like that. Okay, let's talk about one more thing. What if I take an edge and I split this face right across there, right? So what I've got now is two faces. And I take an edge, and what I'm going to do now is actually split the face that I just split with one edge. I'm drawing this edge across this edge. Watch what happens. Okay, now what's going on is SketchUp doesn't know to split an edge with another edge. So what happened there is I drew an edge over another edge, and notice how it didn't stop drawing a line. I'm still rubber banding, and more importantly, this edge still looks thick, and the reason for that is this edge isn't actually cutting any faces, so it still looks thick because it's a profile edge instead of a face cutting edge. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the book. What I'm going to do to stop drawing this line here, because it's bothering me, is I'm going to hit the escape key on my keyboard, just like that. Now, let me grab the push-pull tool, and notice I still have two faces. So this is what I was talking about, right? This face, or I'm sorry, this edge didn't actually cut this edge, meaning I didn't end up with four faces. I only ended up with two faces. If I want to turn this edge into an edge that actually, let me use the pointer tool. If I want to turn this edge into an edge that actually cuts this edge and turns this face into four faces instead of two, it's pretty easy. I'm just going to use the pencil tool, and I'm going to be very careful with where I click. So there it's the intersection to the endpoint. And when I do that, you notice how the line gets thinner? And now what I can do is use the push-pull tool to see where my faces are. So I still have a big face over here. This edge still isn't splitting this face, but this edge did split these two faces. So to get rid of this edge, or let's say not get rid of it, but let's make it sink into the face so it's actually splitting, I'm going to use the pencil tool again. And I'm going to draw over that. And notice how it sinks in, it gets nice and thin. And now if I use the push-pull tool, I've got four separate faces that I can work with just like that. All right, that concludes the video on understanding the relationship between edges and faces.